again. I'm delighted to be here again with my colleague and friend, Becky Woods from ADP. So Becky, this topic, this segment relates to collaborate to innovate. And you've talked about some of the collaboration that you have initiated within ADP. Can you give us an example of how you catalyzed innovation?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Great.
One example is actually a scenario that we had even before COVID, but actually COVID kind of helped us spark the innovation. So we've always had people say, I'm employed by the US entity, but I'd like to go work in Canada for 1 month. Maybe, a family member passed away. I need to help settle their estate. While I'm settling the estate, can I just go work there? I have my laptop, I have my internet, not a problem. So we'd occasionally get queries like that, just a few a year, not too many. And they would usually come to my department because, everyone knows global mobility does cross border. So who would know better than us if this is okay? So we would deal with them on an ad hoc basis. But when COVID happened, in the very beginning for a few months, the entire world was basically on lockdown, so nobody was going anywhere and everyone was working remotely. But in the summertime, around the June time frame, borders started opening up. And people started saying, hey, this is going to be much longer than we thought it was going to be. I don't want to sit in my tiny little apartment in New York City. I want to go back. Maybe I'm from somewhere else and I'd like to go be with my family and be in the big house. And hey, manager, is it okay if I go work somewhere for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, however long it takes until we're all back in the office? And what was happening was associates were asking their managers, who were then going to the HRBP saying, I'm getting this type of request. Is this okay? I don't know. And the HRBPs would start coming to my department because, again, they know it's cross border. Go talk to Global Mobility. And so we started getting these requests from all over the world and all these different HR business partners. And we said, well, okay, we can check the compliance requirements for you. So, I would reach out to my immigration provider and to my tax services provider probably multiple times a day at some point. Like I talk to them more in a 3, 4 month span than I've probably ever spoken with them before. And we would loop in our corporate tax team to see if there were permanent establishment risk and loop in our global payroll team to see if we had to talk about payroll compliance. And we started kind of cobbling together a solution. So every time we were getting these, yes, it was all one-off requests, but at least we'd have a standardized way to reply. But what it was turning into was, here's the compliance requirements, but I can't decide if this person is authorized to go or not. I can just tell you from a compliance perspective if it's okay or not. But you have to look at performance, right? Is the person a good performer? Is the leader confident that they'll still be able to do their work efficiently and effectively in another time zone? Are we concerned about taking a laptop to another country and safety concerns, depending on what country you're going into? And so that then led further discussions to say and to raise up to our CHRO and our HR leadership team to say, look, this is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. A lot more people are asking for it. Managers are not treating it consistently. I'm concerned that there may be inequity within the company if we don't treat this in a consistent manner. We really need a policy or at least some guidelines in place. So then I was able to go ahead and create a cross-functional task force, which actually consisted of 31 of my colleagues across both, HR and non-HR functions, to take a look at this and say, what's the right solution for our company? And we were able to put in place some guidelines, of course, in partnership, with our tax services provider and our immigration providers. We would still potentially need their support. And when we passed these guidelines, it was such a sigh of relief, not to myself, but also to the stakeholders, especially those HR business partners who initially raised it in the first place, because now they had a framework and these guardrails where they could address all of these requests that they were getting and just really streamline the process.
Well, what a great example that shows how you and your colleagues really dealt with disruption and then that catalyzed innovation. And so it sounds like what you and your HR business partners did, and it sounds like it was actually initiated by you, which is fabulous, Becky, is you created a framework. So a framework by which to innovate, be creative, think differently, and say, okay, I can either stay disrupted, or I can create guidelines in a way that I had never considered before, and think about the various what ifs within the guidelines to ensure consistency. So really, hats off to you. Sounds really exciting and challenging at the same time.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun project.
Fabulous. So now when we reflect on, let's reflect for a moment on Eura's members, which is really made up of RMCs and service providers. How have you collaborated with them, and what recommendations do you have as service providers are really looking to remain relevant, collaborate with you in a way in which they contribute to the health of and success of ADP, as well as the employees that you may be moving?
So it's interesting because I think when we're working with lots of different parties, there's lots of different ways we can work together well. And I think when I'm being approached, by a service provider, I'm hoping that, they're looking at what is ADP's corporate culture, how do they run their program, what strengths do they have, what possible weaknesses do they have, and thinking about, where can we add value. And I know I've been approached different ways, and sometimes you'll just get an email, right? Just a very generic email. Here's a new product or service that we have. And when I get those types of communications, I'll look at it and I'll say, well, I already have a solution in place like that. I'm okay. Or I'll look at it and say, oh, this is about lump sums. I don't run a lump sum program. I don't need that. Or I might look at it and say, this looks neat. This piques my interest. I want to learn more. And then y'all reach out and say, let's schedule some time. So I think that's more of this approach where kind of you have this cookie cutter answer, and then, let me see and decide if I want learning more. But another way that I've been approached is service providers coming and saying, let's talk about your program. Let's talk about your policy. And as we have a conversation, then they say, oh, I see a gap here. Or, oh, have you heard about a technology that might help you with that problem you're describing right now? And it's kind of more of fact-finding, due diligence. And it's helping me craft the customized solution that will work for my program. I think the challenge with that approach is that usually if somebody comes to me and says that, can you talk to me about your program? Can we help craft some strategies to fit your needs? I'm very busy. I already have a program that I'm running. Usually if I already have an established relationship with somebody, I'm more open to it. Or if they're, already a current vendor, I'll say, yeah, great. Let's set aside some time. Let's talk through this and see where we can solution together. But a lot of times if it's just a cold call, and my instinct is we already have a solution in place right now. Like we're okay.
Right. And you're really busy, which goes back to what we said earlier is, again, how does that individual contact you? And those chance encounters that you and I talked about earlier is, whether you're at a conference or a networking event, those chance encounters are not happening right now, and they may not for a while. So how does that service provider, how does that RMC who you are not working with kind of gain your attention?
Yeah, and I it is sad, and will be very happy when we can get back to more of our kind of regular in-person conferences, because you get such, again, bang for your buck there, right? You go, you can see 100, 200, 300 people, however it is, and you can end up talking to, 50 people in 2 hours. Whereas, yeah, if I'm just sitting at my desk, I don't have the time to talk to 50 people in 2 hours. But I think one way that I've seen a few service providers, one method that they've utilized, which I think is pretty clever, and I really like it, is they'll approach me and say, "I'm developing a new product or service. I'd like to get your input on it." And then it's more of a, this is neat. I'm helping them, I'm helping guide a solution. And obviously, while I'm, examining the solution and giving feedback where I see that maybe it could be strengthened or developed differently, I also have the opportunity to say, would this be a good fit for my
Right.
organization?
Right.
And I really enjoy those types of sessions most because I also feel like I'm giving back as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that. And you are really wonderful about that. And I've seen that not only before the pandemic, but now when I can see on social media, Becky, that you're always willing to give back and to contribute. And it's clear that you get fulfillment out of it. Yeah, and to your point about the chance encounters, like we were laughing the other day, is there a number of people I've met, whether you're behind the scenes and in the ladies' room or putting your lipstick on or at the table getting a snack. We don't have those encounters. So how do you make the most of your time? And your point about kind of asking for advice, I think for the most part, people feel good when they're asked for their opinion, when they're asked for their advice, when that's done in an authentic manner. And that's a great point. So kind of going on to the next question. How has ADP, and again, if you could reflect on this, how does ADP leadership, how have they changed the way they work? And the part two to that question, Becky, would be as you reflect on the customer experience, whether it's whether you look within or you look to your service providers, how has that changed and how will that change in the future?
Yeah, well, it was interesting kind of watching the ADP leadership kind of as the pandemic progressed and how were they communicating with our 60,000 associates because we had always had on our intranet a place where our leaders could post their blogs or global town halls, and our CEO would periodically come out with communications. But what they've done, and I think it was really clever, is they really centralized the communications and they got very specific about it. And so every Monday, there is an email in our inbox from a different leader each week across the organization. And a lot of times it's just kind of an uplifting, inspiring message. But it's nice, it's consistent, and I think it helps keeps us more engaged. I think also we've done a better job leveraging technology to help bring our associates together, and even with these global town halls that we have, which would be the CEO and a few of the people on his leadership team who would be presenting. We've done a really good job with the video and the live streaming, and every time they do it, they incorporate more now. There's the chat functionality, and because we are across 35 countries, it's nice to be able to feel like, gee, we're not together, but we are together now. And I think even for the presenters, they're used to presenting in front of a live audience. So they're not getting that live energy and feedback from the audience, but you can tell they're watching the chat messaging that's happening while they're presenting because they're commenting on it. So they get to feel the energy too. And it really helps us feel more cohesive and connected as a company.
Fantastic.
And yeah, and I even saw something interesting yesterday, and it was talking about what something good managers do, and it said, be predictable as a manager, not perfect. Your people will trust you if you're predictable. They will never trust you if you pretend to be perfect, nor if you strive to be. So I think when we're communicating, and again, it's more important even now to communicate since we're all remote working, is in your communications always be predictable, honest, and transparent.
Excellent, excellent. And, I think too, the many wonderful webinars that you're a host, and what's been fun about them is people are natural. They laugh. They don't get all the answers right. Sometimes they interrupt. And again, creating that framework so that conversation flows and is organized is great. But your point about kind of being yourself, and recognize today we're more vulnerable because we're working from our home, and hopefully the silver lining throughout this very difficult 12 or so months is we're going to take the best of what we learned and bring that with us in the future.
Yeah, yeah. I think your kind of part two question was around the service provider relationships and how are we communicating differently now that we're remote work, and how could that change in the future too? And I think because in the type of work we're doing, most of us are doing remote work. It's kind of, they say the world is flat. I feel like it's kind of made the world even flatter because I'm having the exact same experience if I'm talking to my colleague who sits in the same state with me as my colleague who sits in Asia or Europe. We're all at home. We all have the same at-home challenges. We're all on the computer. We all have video. It's not, it's the only difference really is time zone in terms of can I just pick up the phone and call you or not? That's that. I feel like that's the only difference is time zone. Everything else is the same. So I think what's been really neat is like in terms of conferences and interactions and making relationships with new people, I've now had the opportunity personally. I live in the New York City area, but I've been able to join, for example, the Houston Relocation Professionals group and one of the networking groups, and listen to what they're doing, or attend a Euro event and see what they're doing. The time zone, the location doesn't matter. I'm exposed to so many new people in the industry that I never would have met before, and that's really neat.
That's great. That's great. And the learning is so rich, and our ability to kind of just tap in, through our computers, through a webcast, is there. And so how we take advantage of that will help us all learn and grow.
Yeah. Interestingly, too, I think even before COVID, when we talk about employee experience and we talk about how do we want customer interactions to be, and there was a lot of discussion around generational differences, and some people want a phone call and some people want a text message and some people don't want to talk to you at all but want a self-serve website where they can visit. And I feel like with the technological advances that have happened and even been accelerated because of COVID, I think a lot more people are more comfortable with technology than they once were. And it may actually, the service differentiation may narrow now because I even look at my own family and my kids, myself, my parents, my grandparents, we're all pretty good on Zoom now. And whereas we weren't before. So again, thinking about how do we need to service our customers and interact with them, leveraging more technology, we may all be more comfortable with one or two solutions instead of four or five.
Yeah, great point. And I think your point about kind of the world is flat, we can thank Thomas L. Friedman for that. He had the insight, what was it, 10 years ago, hierarchies from everything I've read and am now experiencing, the hierarchies within an organization, within an ecosystem, to be a valued player and to have a meaningful voice. It doesn't matter your title, your position, your location. It's finding ways to collaborate, to add value that's clear, that's authentic, and that's value added.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Becky, for your time, for sharing your insights. They're truly valuable. Much appreciated.
Thank you.